You had a nice evening yesterday? Yes. Ready for a lot of sessions today? That's great. We have moved down here because we are so concerned about security, so it seems so insecure to be up there, so to not fall down down here on the ground. Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to install SuperOffice in a secure manner. And this is primarily for on-site installations. So the agenda today is, why is this important? Why do you have to care about these security issues? And then we'll look at some examples of some sites that has been hacked the last recent years. We'll go through some of the security features in SuperOffice that you should enable when installing SuperOffice. And then we're going through some deployment scenarios, and I'm going to show you how, in practice, to set up SuperOffice in a secure environment. So that's going to be a bit technical, that part. And at the end, Hans Oluf will talk about what is information security. So he'll say some words about that. I'm having Øyvind from Watchcom with me here today.
Yeah.
So you can present yourself and say what you're doing.
Yeah, my name is Øyvind Brusethaug. I come from Watchcom Security Group. We are a medium-sized, small-size consultant firm within information security, located in Oslo. We do security testing, consulting, monitoring for our customers. We have different types of security testing. We test web application, mobile applications, internal and external networks. We do advanced persistent threats emulation, what we call red team tests. We cooperate with Stian and his department, or whole SuperOffice, with testing their product and making sure their infrastructure is secure. So I'm over there several times, maybe once, two times a week, depending, and cooperating with these guys regularly, every week. So yeah. By the way, we are arranging a Capture the Flag tournament. I will give you the URL later, or you can come by our stand. For those who don't know what that is, Capture the Flag is a hacking contest. So it's various assignments within web application, crypto, reversing, and so on. And we'll make sure we have it on every level. So for some of you guys who maybe know how to do some of this stuff, there are advanced tasks for you, and there are also beginners tasks for people who have never played with this before. So please register at that and try it out, and we will make sure the winner gets a little notice, small. Yeah, we can see it's some alcohol. Yeah. So we have a bottle of bubble waters that we will hand out to the guy in the first place. So yeah.
Now suddenly everyone here wanted to.
Yeah. So make sure come by our stand, get the URL for me, register, and I will also have a screen, at least when I'm over the stand, with the scoreboard, so you can see how and you can also see the scoreboard when you go into the site as well. So yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I expect someone from this group to win this contest.
Yeah, me as well.
Yeah.
And just come by if you need help with some of the tasks. Just ask me, and I will give you some small hints, but I won't solve them for you.
So, why do we care so much about security these last years? Nowadays, more and more of the systems you are using are cloud-based, and that means that actually the whole world has access to your systems. For 5 years ago, there were more client installations, and you were more protected in your own environment, but now it's open to the wide public. And it's a fact that all software probably contains security issues. I guess when you do penetration tests, have you ever encountered a system where you can't find anything at all?
Never where you can't find anything. I've seen systems that are, yeah, you have some minor flaws, and some of them are just deviation from best practices, but otherwise the application are secure. But I always find something, at least. It's never a test where you don't have anything to point out to the customer. So yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and SuperOffice is in that group that we just find something, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. For 10 years ago, or those of you who used computer while you were kids, remember that the big concern then was to get a virus on your computer. And the virus maybe displayed you've been hacked or something on the screen, or even worse, it would format your hard drive. But it's not like that anymore, that it's just kids that are doing this from their rooms. Hacking has turned into a professional industry. And we've seen Watchcom has showed us what they actually do and how this is organized. So can you tell us something about what is this industry?
It's as sort of before in the world you had sort of other crime industries where it was easy to make money, and when technology was introduced, some guys discovered that yeah, if I have good enough skills, I can actually be rich, and the sort of the consequences weren't that big before. So a lot of guys have formed groups where they do large scams by collecting credit cards from hacked web shops. Some hack companies and withdraw important information that they sell on certain kinds of fora. So you have industrial espionage a lot, and you see the Chinese actors often use industrial espionage to improve their product. So even legit companies in China have sort of our own cyber division that maybe retrieve important patterns or technology information that can use to improve their product. So it's quite organized, and you have mafia groups trying to make money because it's a bit harder to make money the old-fashioned ways, and you also have sort of like hacking team. If someone heard of this, it's sort of a legit company but specializes in malware, so they sell to governments, and yeah. So you have a lot of good professionals, and a lot of guys from Russia have good education, PhD, master's degree, but they can't seem to get any job, so yeah, they form their own groups and make money out of doing crimes. So it's a full-time job for a lot of guys in the world, so yeah. And you have the government actors as well, like the NSA and similar GHQ, and those also perform espionage, more of a governmental level, but you also see it in WikiLeaks and so on, and they actually spy on industry actor as well to get a leverage in contractual negotiations between nations. So yeah.
And would it be possible for me as a private person to go somewhere and buy this as a service if I wanted to do some hacking against a company, or maybe a private person?
Yeah. Well, you have the so-called dark web where you can buy a lot of these services, denial of service. You can actually buy access to a hacked server in a company if you want. So, and if you pay even more, they won't resell the access. They will reserve the access only for you, so only you have access to that server. So yeah, it's possible, and you don't need to go to the dark web. You have forums on the regular web as well that provides this, so it's quite easy. And you have forums that point out security flaws in websites that you can exploit because they haven't given notice to the web shop owner, for example. So they sort of share these vulnerabilities between them, and yeah, if you pay, you get better, and some you get for free as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Guttorm talked about automating yesterday, and of course the hacking industry is also automating. So even if you think you're doing this for small customers, then they're not likely to get hacked because they're not so interesting. There are a lot of automated scripts and bots that's going through the network every day and checking if it's possible to hack the site.
Yeah, and oh, sorry.
You can
And computing power is also, because even if you're a company with, say, less interesting information, your computing power can be interesting for criminals because they use it to crack passwords, perform denial of service attacks. So you don't necessarily need to have interesting information or valuable information. Your whole network can be valuable enough if they infect a lot of clients so they can be used in a botnet.
Yeah, and Marek had a nice analogy to this. It's like when thieves go down your street and check every door to check if it's open or not. If it's closed, they just go to the next door. And if it's open, then you're in a lot of problems. Just to show you an example, this is actually from our production base. I didn't ask Vidar about this, but I did anyway. So I went into the log this is for customer service. And it's the log it's a query that has failed because the string is too long. But if you look at the content of the string here, you clearly see that this is an automated hacking attempt. And this goes through every day. So each day, our own production system is trying to be hacked. And this is probably true for almost all systems that are present on the web. Okay, so it's not only us that's trying to be hacked. A lot of the largest companies in the world has been hacked. We have eBay. In May 2014, they were hacked, and their database was compromised, and they lost all the usernames, passwords, email address, and so on. There was a group that was called the Syrian Electronic Army that took responsibility for the hack. And this caused, for eBay, this caused their prices on their shares to crash. It went down in the following days, and that have a huge effect on intraday trading that the world is dependent on. We have this one. Everyone remember this? The PlayStation network was hacked. Everyone couldn't use their PlayStations for actually 23 days for online gaming. Sony estimated that this hack cost them $170 million. So it's costly. Anyone familiar with this site? Hands up. I have run your email address against this site. So, oh no. This is a site that's aimed for married people wanting to have an affair. And they said that this is a secure site and everything should be okay. But in 2015, the Impact team, they stole their whole database. And it threatened them to go public with this if they didn't shut down their site. But Ashley Madison didn't do that, and they did as they said and released all this information to the public. And this resulted in hurt for spouses and children of mostly fathers who were on this site. And there were also reported suicides linked to this breach. So people actually killed themselves because they were on this site. I saw an interview with an ex-wife, and he was a priest when he was in this site. So he took his own life. Another interesting thing is because the passwords were badly protected, so they were decrypted. And the two most normal passwords, anyone can guess what those were? Yeah, password, that's one. No. And the other one was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The most common password. This is a very interesting story, actually. There's been written a lot about this hack. It has huge social consequences. It has this ethics in it, so yeah, it's an interesting story. And we have Adobe that was hacked in 2013. At that time, it was the largest hack done because they lost 130 million records, including username, passwords, and credit card information. They also published vast portions of the source code from Adobe on the internet. If you want to check yourself, there's a site that's called haveibeenpawned.com. It's hosted by Troy Hunt, who's a very respected guy in security. So I tried running my own private email address there, and as you can see, my email address is from Adobe, the Adobe hack, and it's also used in Last.fm. I think he earlier had Ashley Madison in this list, but that was removed.
Yeah, and he's quite a, let's say, he doesn't reveal any information. He checks if your email address is in some of these data dumps and shows this if your email address exists in one of those. But of course you have other sites in,
I was just wondering, all these huge companies, they obviously have backups and backup procedures. So the hackers goes in and delete those as well, backups?
Yeah, you have had cases where that has been performed, yeah. So you have some Russian crypto malware who actually targets the backup system first if it can find it based on some backup technologies. And after that is done, they start decrypting encrypting the rest of the information. But you also have those sites on sort of the underweb where I often search and see what's there, and there you have the full password, you have address, you have social security number. So this is only for you to check if you have been sort of pawned, like I said. But you have other sites where your information might be freely available to all others if you were in such a breach.
And it's a nice service here. You can register your email address and get notifications if your email address turns up on any of those lists.
Yeah.
So why does the customer, or you on behalf of the customer, need to care about security? Isn't this really handled by the SuperOffice software? A server, it typically doesn't run only SuperOffice. It runs a lot of software, and that other software might have security issues in them. And when you're on a server, and if one of the applications gets hacked or the subsystems get hacked, that server is pretty much lost. Yeah. That's my impression, at least. Yeah. So it's much about making your installation less attractable to the hackers, so those automated scripts doesn't light up a red light for your installation. And the security in the infrastructure is equally important as the software security. You can't just have just one of those parts. Both needs to be secure.
Easiest way in, that's always.
Yeah.
Yeah. If your application is well protected, I will try to find another way in. Exposed services that are vulnerable, or opposite, if you sort of you can have a lot of services exposed, but those are updated, there aren't any vulnerabilities in them, but you have a extremely vulnerable website where I can sort of bypass the security manners there. So it's equally both should be as important.
Yeah. And more often, we see that customers have demands when it comes to security. Have you encountered that your customers ask about security? Yeah. We've seen that recently, especially the 2-3 last years, that is more and more often we get these huge security demands, and we have to fill out those forms. Yeah.
Some of those questions are about SuperOffice and SuperOffice Online solution. Are we planning maybe to get some certificates about like practices we are using or something? Not about Prisma, like hosting partner, but SuperOffice itself.
Yeah, we're working on that for SuperOffice Online specific to have that well documented, so we have something to hand out to the customers when they're asking. So we don't need to fill out those forms each time. It's pretty difficult to, if you're not an expert, it's hard.
Yeah, many of these requirements come from standards such as ISO and others, which set pretty good, set the bar pretty high. So yeah, we need to sort of have this formalized.
Yeah, and you are deeply involved in this process, creating this documentation. So, for those customers who find this complicated or expensive, what's the solution? Go online, because then we care about the security. So then the customer don't need to do that. Okay. Which security features do we have in SuperOffice Onsite? One of the first things I would like to mention is Active Directory single sign-on. The good thing about that is that the users don't need to remember another set of passwords and usernames, and I don't need to remember to change them, because that will be handled by the Active Directory password policies, and it's a secure protocol. So
Yesterday we get something about OAuth online. Is there something planned for us for Onsite to work together with Federation Service and using this kind of authentication?
I brought with me Hans-Olof to answer questions like this.
Regarding OAuth on premises, that is definitely something we are going to take a closer look at.
Can you use this?
We are definitely planning on implementing OAuth on premises, but it is in the backlog, but it really depends on the real demand for it. So if there is an increase of demand for OAuth or using authentication, that would be possible to implement. But I would also say that it is possible for you as partners to develop Federation authentication services as well, using the NetServer APIs that we have available.
Just to ask questions if you have during the presentation. You don't need to wait to the end, so just raise your hands and ask questions. That's good. So if the customer doesn't use Active Directory or doesn't want to use it, please enable the password policies in SuperOffice, because I've seen so many examples of where you have the user ID and the user and then the password is the same, or even blank passwords, or one letter, yeah, 2 letters. That's very easy to hack. So please use that. And I don't know if many do this, but the role-based permission system in SuperOffice should be used based on the principle of least privilege required, so that each user does only have access to those data that he actually needs to see. So then it takes some time to set it up and manage it, but it's a good way to protect data when a user is first into the system. And of course, encrypting traffic. There's still a lot of installation that doesn't use HTTPS. It's going unencrypted. And that's both between the client, the browser, and the server. So you should always use HTTPS there. But you should also use HTTPS server-to-server communication. So if your infrastructure gets infected or compromised, using HTTPS between the servers makes the hacker can't listen to the traffic. Yeah. Because I guess that's a method they often use. They do some malware there, and it will listen to the network traffic.
Yeah, you can install, you can code up something that listens for unencrypted traffic, or if you're on the net, you can sort of start your own simple tools like Wireshark and just have them going for a while, and after that start parsing the logs and see if you find anything interesting, because they're often fields are often called passwords, so it's quite easy to search out when you sort of do a regular HTTP post, and some IDs might have password or secret key or something. It's easy to search and filter out, along with your username.
If you come to the last session we have today, we'll
Yeah.
show you how
We'll
to
show you.
actually do this in
Yeah.
practice. HTTPS doesn't necessarily mean secure, because there are the old protocols like SSL2 and SSL3 and also TLS1
Yeah.
at some point. They should be disabled on the servers. By default, they are installed on many Windows servers. I even think that's on Windows 2012.
Yeah, it's quite
And
common.
TLS1.2 is not enabled. So you should disable those and enable TLS 1.2 and 1.1. All modern browsers supports this, so this shouldn't be a problem anymore.
Yeah, and browsers that doesn't support that, yeah, just exclude them. They need to upgrade. That's simple.
Yeah, and Pocket also now supports TLS 1.2, so yeah, there shouldn't be really any necessary to have those old protocols enabled. And you should harden the encryption on the Windows servers. We will take a look at this later, how that is done. And when it comes to certificates, make sure you have a valid certificate that you have bought from an external CA. Don't use a self-signed certificate. If you do, you'll get something like this in browsers. This is from Edge. It says that it clearly look for our customer, this will look scary to me. I wouldn't go in here.
And also, if you sort of manage your own certificate, it's quite a lot of job. So, of course, if you have full control of this, you have sort of routines implemented and so on, okay, but I will still recommend buying it from a third party, because it's a third party. It's not you. You don't own your own. So,
No.
Yeah. So it's better to sort of put it out to someone who actually knows how to do this. That makes yeah, it makes a better impression also. Yeah, for
Yeah.
the site.
Are there any recommendations?
Of CA vendors? I don't have any specific for now, but the most common ones in Norway, for example, you have Bypass, and yeah, I don't have any specific vendor, but I would look for the more top common ones, I believe. Yeah.
Which are we using, Vidar?
We are using Float.
Yeah.
Based on history, it's not it's a kind of quality of their website. The price is of course important, and they have to be listed on all the main kind of by all the vendors.
Yeah.
And they have to be in the browsers. So there's like 5, 6 top that we almost.
And I guess they are good at notifications when your certificates are, so you get a warning. Yeah. But because we've seen that's a problem with HTTPS, that no one cares about renewing the certificate. And it starts failing, and you get into this problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you should test your HTTPS configuration regularly. And we recommend using SSL Labs. If you go, that's an online service where you can type in the URL of your site, and it will do some math in the background, and will create a score from A to F, I think.
Yeah.
And you should definitively aim for an A.
Yeah.
Anything below that is not good enough, actually.
Yeah, you should, because it's easy to get an A.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you should absolutely get an A.
You have also tools like SSLice. That's an application you can install on your servers if you want to run this locally and automate it in some way. This for Windows 2012 R2, if you're installing that, you should run the security configuration wizard, because the security isn't good enough on default on a 2012 server. I think that's better in 2016. Then it seems to have the principle of install nothing, and you need to add all those things you actually need. But in 2012, they have by default installed pretty much. So you should, in that security wizard, you should apply SMB signing to secure the file protocol, and make sure also that you run as few services as needed. There's no point in running an FTP server, for example, if you don't use FTP. No. It just broadens the surface that the service vulnerable to. And you should install the Enhanced Mitigation Experience Toolkit called EMET. I will explain that later, what it actually is.
Yeah.
And very important, keep the servers up to date with the latest updates from Microsoft. Everyone knows this, but if you take a look at servers around, it's very often that they're not updated. It can be 1 year, 2 years without updates. So important. And you should install anti-malware solutions on the server. It doesn't help you with the newest hacks called 0 days, but it helps against those that are known and out there.
Yeah, known malware that's already been sort of researched on. They have this. They have the signature. This will protect against those. But of course, if I write my own malware and deploy it on Stian's laptop right now, it's very likely that it doesn't get caught because it doesn't have the signature. Some malware solutions provide some sandboxing and all, but that can be bypassed as well if you're check for this in the code. So this is not it's not a silver bullet, but yeah, it will help you against most common attacks or most common malware, I would say.
I often hear about the word 0 day when we're talking about security.
Yeah.
What is 0 day?
A 0 day is sort of a vulnerability that isn't publicly known. So if I find something in, let's say, SuperOffice that you guys doesn't know about, and other people, it's only sort of me or my crew, if I have a hacker crew with me, we know about this. And we sort of keep this quiet because okay, let's take Microsoft instead, which has had some 0 days. We can use this to exploit computers all over the world without getting that notice. Of course, people can sort of detect the attack, but it's vulnerabilities that aren't known to the public. It's basically the most easiest way to explain it. Yeah, and if you see in malware like Stuxnet, exploited several 0 days, so that's why it was so successful and so widespread, and also because it was coded by some best malware authors in the world. So, but yeah, it's if you have vulnerabilities in Windows that are known, of course, known vulnerabilities, and 0 day is a term used because they're not known, there are no patches for it, there's no fixes for it. So
And you can sell it if you have one.
yeah, you will make a lot of money, millions, potentially.
And of course, you should also update SuperOffice regularly, because we do also bug fixes concerning security. And as always, latest is greatest. Then you get the newest features also. So that's a bonus. Client security, the PCs that people bring in and out of networks, mobile phones, these are more exposed to malware because, like now, probably most of your computers are hooked onto this Wi-Fi hotel. And it's not that hard to get into a computer that's hooked up to a network like this.
No, not necessarily. If you have some vulnerable services exposed on your computer, or if I can trick you to sort of perform an action that will lead to a compromise, it's quite easy. We do it all the time in our tests, so yeah, it doesn't necessarily require that much. And of course, that's why mostly malware is found on client computers because you move around, you're connected to different networks. And if you look at, let's take Watchcom, for example, or SuperOffice, or any other company, you have a big firewall in front, you have different IPS systems and all security measurements before the client network. So it's, you sort of either have to go through mail or links or, catching one of the clients with sort of on an infected site. But if I connect to this Wi-Fi and you connect to this Wi-Fi, we're on the same network, I can reach you. So you're a lot more exposed. And publicly open Wi-Fis are publicly open, and you don't know who sits on those networks.
No, you don't know who you are connecting to actually.
Yeah.
So on these computers, keep Windows up to date. Use antivirus solution. Don't turn off the firewall on the computers. They are there for a reason. And at least it's much about user awareness, that the user knows about don't click links in suspicious looking emails, for example.
Yeah. Don't
install a software if it pops up on your computer. Please install me.
Yeah, and you sort of have a funny story. I was at DEF CON and Black Hat, which is some hacker conferences that run each summer in Las Vegas. And this year, and I go to the hotel network, and I just thought, I want to sort of do an experiment, and I just tried to browse to some HTTPS service in Norway that I regularly browse from a virtual machine, and right away I saw this certificate warning. Yeah, that shouldn't be, that's not normal. I go to this site all the time and I never get certificate warnings. Of course, we're on a public network, and someone was trying to perform what we call a man-in-the-middle attack. So he will sit between my computer and the server I was trying to access and trying to sort of attack me by being in line and decrypt my traffic. So that's how easy it can be. And if I just click on ignore this security warning and continue browsing, of course, he can catch me.
Yeah.
So it's more about sensing what is abnormal and act accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you see a normal situation, you better be cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's get over to look at actually how to deploy SuperOffice in a secure manner. We have some different scenarios that you can see. Here's a scenario that we have that's an internal-only scenario if you have an installation that's not available on the internet. Then it's pretty easy. You can, the normal is to have all the servers installed in a zone, and the client network is in another zone. And you can use VPN from the outside to connect to this network, but it will not be public available. So we're not going to talk about this scenario so much. This is a more normal scenario. Probably many of you have installed and seen these solutions. That's where you install the application itself in the DM set. So both service and the sales server are installed in the DM set. And in the internal network, you have the file server and the database server, because you don't want them in the DM set. And then you connect to the DM set through a firewall from the outside. But this is the scenario that we recommend together with Watchcom. They have come up with this. So maybe can you take us through this and explain why it is like this?
Yeah, I can do that. And some of the points we will go into later. But starting, the big difference here is you have installed what is a reverse proxy or a web application firewall in the DM set. The reason for this is you connect from the internet through to the reverse proxy or the web application firewall. You perform your requests. Web application firewall sends your request to the web server and put it back. And the big difference is that you're not interacting directly with the web server. And in this web application firewall, you have certain rules for filtering out the text, like Stian showed you. And you sort of narrow down the openings in the inner firewall, so you can only go through port 443. Because if you sort of, it's all about building or defense in depth, if you heard that term. It's building security in layers. If I compromise the reverse proxy, I doesn't necessarily have access to the application and the web server and database and the file server. I'm stuck here. So now I have to find a way over port 443 to get into this and sort of exploit this, and that sort of narrows down the surface. If you saw the previous drawing, you have port 445, which is SMB, open as well into the internal server network. That's support I use a lot when I perform both the internal network testing and red team testing, because you can do psexec and such commands to run commands on this server. So here you sort of block in that. In addition, the web application firewall will stop different attacks against your website. And you have sort of the management network terminal that we've drawn up there. Reason for that is you don't want to connect to the internal servers from the client network. Reason for that is, like Stian said just the previous slides, they're more exposed to malware or Trojans because you move around a lot with the client. So we recommend a dedicated management terminal to update and do fixes on that server. So you don't connect from the client network. You don't need to have openings to the internal server network from the client network. So you sort of prevent attackers from spreading into the server network from the client networks as well. So you go to the dedicated management terminal and perform updates from your on your web servers there. And if you you only interact from the client network with the web application firewall as well. So if I am on a client computer and I do sort of browser proxying from my command and control server and try to attack the web application, I will probably get stopped by the web application firewall, or at least I won't interact directly with the web application server. So it's building more and more perimeters to eventually the valuable data that lives in the database servers.
Yeah, so it's much about reducing the attack surface.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if I show this to a customer, he probably would say, at least the smaller customers, because the larger customers maybe already have this in place.
Yeah.
But for smaller customers, they say, this looks expensive.
Yeah.
Is it possible to do this without paying for a lot of software?
Yeah, it's possible. You have a lot of good free tools out there. One of those, for example, we recommend using in the secure setup is the EMET, or Enhanced Mitigation Experience Toolkit. This should be installed on each server, and what it does is I have Stian's binary installed on my server. It's vulnerable for a buffer overflow. It's a common, or previously has been common attack vectors. This will prevent the most common exploits from running. So if I run an exploit that should work on a PC without EMET install, and I try to run it against a PC with EMET installed on it, it will sort of do some protection mechanism. If you want to know more about this in depth, I can explain it to you at the stand or afterwards, but you have things like data execution prevention, ASLR, and such things enabled on that application you are running. So if it's vulnerable, it gets really hard to exploit. I have seen some bypass, but it's quite hard. So it will protect vulnerable applications and other applications you are running on that server from being exploited. So we recommend this on all Windows servers.
Yeah, and I see also Microsoft, they said that you should install this, and it's free.
Yeah.
You just download from
You
Microsoft.
download it and install it, and Stian is going to talk later about some configuration you can do with it to optimize it against your SuperOffice environment.
Yeah. And we talked about this HTTP setup, those protocols that should be removed and those that should be enabled. I've seen that at NSM, National Security Authority in English. They have a PowerShell script that you can run and that will handle all this setup.
Yeah.
Because it can be a bit tricky if
Yeah.
you're not used to do this.
Yeah, of course. And this will do the stuff automated for you, and it will also create a backup of your configuration. So if something goes wrong, you can always roll back and try again.
Yeah, we have some slides showing how
Also
it is done.
free.
Yeah, also
Yeah.
free. Everything is free here, actually.
Yeah.
And we have the reverse proxy.
Yeah.
And that's also something you can download that integrates into IIS.
Yeah.
And we have mod security.
Yeah.
And what's mod security?
It's a web application firewall, as I said. It specializes in preventing HTTP traffic that has malicious commands in it. Yeah, you can go more into details, but if I send a string like Stian showed in the beginning, the web application will hopefully detect this and block your request to the web server. So it will protect against a lot of common web application attacks. So even if your application might be is vulnerable for, let's say, a SQL injections, this might or has a good chance preventing it if you don't know how to bypass it. And then you go into more advanced attacks again.
Yeah.
So, but there is quite a good security measures to have against your web server, and all the large companies with sort of advanced websites use it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you generally say that automated attacks are more low-level attacks than when a person is behind?
Yeah, more or less. Of course, you can have a skilled person writing some pretty advanced code that performs automated attacks, but
But it will soon be inside the signature.
yeah. At least if it's distributed worldwide, it will be inside the signature patterns. And yeah, so yeah, I would say that.
So if you have these basic small programs installed,
Yeah.
basically secure against automated attacks.
Yeah, of course.
99%.
As a pure technical guy, I will never say you're. Yeah, but yeah, I will say you have done a very good job, and it will be quite hard to exploit this. We have performed tests against it, and it's quite hard, even with manual techniques as well, because the traffic needs to go through it. So yeah.
And very important, it also has logging, so you can see that someone actually is trying to do this.
Yeah.
So you can, for example, block out that IP address.
Or you can alert to someone who has responsible for the security in this system.
Maybe some of these programs have inbuilt that it reports to the...
Yeah, that can be.
And they will include it in the...
Yeah, I'll show you later on how this one works. At least,
Yeah.
But yeah.
That could be done, and if you have sort of a log correlation system or some security center system, you have a lot of these CM solutions. They can probably parse this log and give you notifications. Yeah.
And of course, you need service and sales installed on two different servers. Not free, but very cheap.
Yeah, and as we know, security is never free. It's not if you have an alarm on your house, it costs money. So yeah.
Yep. So let's go through how do we set up this environment. So you start by downloading EMET from Microsoft.
But EMET is announced to be closed in next year or year after next year.
EMET? Yeah, that's right. And it's going to be deprecated from 2018.
Yeah, and we will monitor for
Now that's been prolonged by Microsoft.
We
So,
will-
we'll
yeah.
come with until then we'll
Yeah.
go for EMET. And
Yeah, and then we'll look for alternative solutions. So we will.
it's just been released in a new version, 5.5. That's the newest version
Yeah.
from there. But it currently, from what the web page says, it works on Windows Server 2012, but it doesn't state that it works on 2016. Maybe that's because it's not needed on that server. I don't know that yet.
Yeah,
actually.
and they might have some issues when testing, or
Maybe.
they haven't done the full checks yet. So yeah,
Yeah.
I expect it to be also
Available.
compatible with 2016, but I don't work for Microsoft, so I'm not 100% sure, but I will be surprised if it's not.
Install this on all servers. When you install it on the sales and service server, then you should go for manual setting in the last step, because we will provide you with the configuration to be used. But for the other servers, just go for automatic setup. When it's installed, you should see in the tray app area that little icon you see on the right. That means EMET is installed and working. And you can open it from there. The first thing you should do is to set the quick profile name to maximum security settings.
And you see here was the sort of prevention mechanisms I was talking about, and this might be a bit difficult to understand if you haven't been that into software vulnerabilities and that sort of field of this, but I can explain it if you're curious about it.
Yeah, but the good thing here is it's easy to set up.
Yeah, so you don't need to think about it. We have done it for you.
Yeah.
Stian will show you later.
And then from our website, on the community website, you can download the configuration file. There's one for sales and one for service, and then you import them on the respective servers. If you get any errors, because that configuration file needs to have hard-coded paths, so if you have installed service or sales in another path than the default one, you need to go into those configuration files and just change the path, so EMET knows where it is installed. So after you install it, you need actually to reboot the server for everything to be in effect. And here's a screenshot from EMET running on the service server, and we can see that it's effective on the service executables. So now look at the interesting part. It's the in the DM set where we are going to install the proxy and the Web Application Firewall. I think we can skip this. You have explained why we need this application firewall.
Again, if someone is more curious about this, they can just ask me after this session.
Yeah. So the instructions are for a Windows 2012 R2 server, but it should be pretty much the same for other servers as well. So we need the IIS installed, of course. And then you go to the web platform installer inside IIS and install application request routing 3.0. You will get both 2.5 and 3.0, so install that, the latest one. And this will allow the server to work as a proxy server. And it should look like this when you have installed it. You don't need the other ones, just install the latest one. So now you go into the IIS, and on the root node of IIS, you have now gotten a new application there. It's called Application Request Routing Cache. So we open this one, and you get into here, and make sure to click Enable Proxy. On HTTP version, and keep live should stay as it is. But turn off reverse rewrite host in response headers. We will add a rule, outbound rule later to handle this part. I explain why we'll do that. And then you just click apply, and you now have a proxy server that's ready. That's easy it is to set up the proxy server itself. But now we need to create the steps for our SuperOffice sites. When we get a request into the DMZ zone, into the proxy server, it needs to know what to do with these requests. So to do this, we need to create 2 new sites in IIS. We're still on the proxy server. And you should have, or you can have, 2 subdomains. That's the normal way to do it on those 2 sites. For example, in our example, we have salesmyorganization.com and servicemyorganization.com for those 2 servers. And these will just be empty shells. There's nothing in those sites. So when you add it, you need to create an empty folder and point it to that in physical path. There should be no files in there. And you do the same for service. So here we have an example of what that site should look like. You have a site name, of course. Physical path just points to a directory you have created. And inside hostname, you type the hostname that it should answer to. And that's the outside address, the address it will be available from the rest of the world. You see now that we are having HTTP. And I think it's easiest to set up this using HTTP first, just to verify that things works. But if you are very experienced with HTTPS setup, you can do that at the same time, of course. But maybe it's easiest to do it with HTTP first, test it, and then apply HTTPS.
Did you ever try SuperOffice with other reverse proxies? I mean, like Linux-based reverse proxies?
No, I haven't tried that myself, but it should work.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
It should work, but yeah, we have.
So it's kind of best practice.
Yeah.
To keep on Microsoft.
Yeah, that's SuperOffice and Microsoft, the company. So, but it should work with others, and there's a lot of commercial actors you can use. I guess larger customers users already have this proxy, so you just need to add the rules there. There's nothing magic in here, really. So. But you need to know about those demands that SuperOffice has to make this work. And you should be able to use this method with another proxy as well. So now we need to create those rules that will transform our request into the internal server. So just select one of the servers and you click this URL rewrite button, and then you'll get this window up, and in inbound and outbound rules, you click the reverse proxy button. So now you should enter the internal server, the internal host name that service or sales is installed in. You see that's the first line there. And make sure to turn off enable SSH offloading, because we want to use HTTPS all the way. As we said earlier, you should also use HTTPS in the internal traffic. And this works if you're using, for example, mod security as a web application firewall, because it's installed itself into IIS, so it can still inspect the traffic. But if you have an external application that does this, then it won't work the same way.
Yeah, and then you sort of need to decrypt the traffic and then re-encrypt it after it leaves. So, yeah, that's.
But by using mod security, it's installed flawless into IIS. There's one more thing you need to do for sales to work, and that is that when you create that rule, you need to go and edit it again, because you need to put this pattern in, and that's when you browse to SuperOffice, you say myhost.com/SuperOffice, and then it's default ASPX and those things. So if you haven't changed the default setup, it should say SuperOffice in the pattern like there. If it answers to something else, you need to type that in there.
Is that the site name of SuperOffice?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it the site name of SuperOffice? It's rather
Yeah, it's actually the path.
Yeah.
But I think the installer calls it the same, so it will be the same in the installer, I guess. But you can always change that afterwards. And We also need to add an outbound rule. That's because else redirecting wouldn't work, as that the redirect address would be to the internal address. For example, mailings uses that a lot. When someone clicks a link and you track it, it will redirect afterwards to the correct site. And if you don't do this, it does not work. So you go into outbound rules and add a blank rule. And what we are going to do is we are going to replace, you say under variable names, we are going to replace the response location or rewrite that rule. So in pattern, you just, all this is available on our website on community, so you don't need to remember all this, but it's pattern you need to change. And under action, that's a rewrite rule, and in the action properties, it shows how you build up the URL. So just use your internal domain on the top, and down there, you need to use your external hostname. Actually, this is all that's needed to set up the proxy server. So now you could actually test your setup and connect from the outside and see if it actually works, that you can log in and you can do your normal things. Any question to the proxy server? Yeah?
I have a proxy deployment. I must handle redirects made on the server side. I mean 301 or 302 redirects. And I have to add additional response status handling. I have to add additional output rule to make it work. I don't know if it works okay, but in my scenario I have to add additional rule.
Yeah, this setup, but I know our previous version of the documentation didn't do it correct, but the new documentation, should do that correct. But because you're right, there was something wrong in there, and and redirecting the links in mailing didn't work. So this should handle it. I think it was something also wrong with action type.
Yeah,
It was a redirect instead of a rewrite.
yeah, we had some. I remember that
Yeah.
we needed to add some.
I was modifying response status variable to handle to set the correct location.
Yeah.
I was catching all the redirects and make the header correct.
But if you could check your setup with the latest version, and if that doesn't work, please contact us so we can update and try to fix that.
I have worked with solution, but previously I was trying to do it myself, and I was testing all the different scenarios, and I need to add additional output rule. I will show you.
Yeah.
We can have a little word about it afterwards. I think it's the checkbox in the application request for update.
Yes, I know what you mean, but
Yeah.
of course we have to manually handling outbound traffic. But I will show you how it's made in my.
Yes, please do. Yeah. So now we have a setup that works, and we need to add mod security into it. Then you need to install Visual Studio 2013, the runtime. It's just download it from the web. Make sure you choose this right version. Download mod security and just run the install wizard using the default settings. Mod security reports into the Windows event log. So you need to go in there to see notifications and stuff. And now you can go into the event viewer, and you will see something like this, indicating that it installed correctly. By default, mod security will install itself and enable itself on all the IIS sites. So if you have more other sites running there, you could go in and disable it. You'll find it in the configuration editor under mod security, and you can turn it off if you have other sites there. We have a rule set for mod security that you can download from the community, and these are tailor-made to work with service and with sales. And Also make sure that you load this configuration file into the modsecurityis.conf file. There's a strange thing in there. It says that it should load all files with extension .conf. But for me, it didn't work, so I had to add it, and then it did work. And don't use these rules with other web applications, because they are specially made for our products. And this is what the rule file look like. We have this section here that's a sec rule remove by ID, and that's some of the rules we have removed to avoid false positives. We need those to make SuperOffice work.
Yeah, and it's when installing a product like this or a network IDS, there's always some signatures that doesn't apply to you or your network, and the same is with a web application firewall. So we have sort of tested out what's...
Yeah, and I guess this is pretty normal.
Yeah.
It's not unnormal to have to remove some of the rules from a web application. So now you can log in to SuperOffice, use it. It should still work. And then you can go into the event viewer and check for warnings. So if you have a warning at this step, that could mean you have encountered a new false positive. But it shouldn't, because we have tested it. So, but yeah, maybe with a new version it comes up with you have a customization that breaks things. So check that. And then if you want to remove that, you can add it to the rule set. One important point is when you have installed mod security, you need to set up some kind of, that someone reviews the logs or set up automated notification from the event viewer, because it just logs warnings to the event log. So there are a lot of tools out there that can monitor the Windows event log and where you can set up notifications.
Yeah.
And this is what we've seen a rule that's been broken. You can see the ID there. That's because this is before I install the rule set, because that's one of the rules that we have to remove. So this is what it looks like. So now it's time to test your system. Go through it and see that it works. Please test mailings and redirects to see that it works, because that's one of the areas we've seen that doesn't work. If you are going to use web tools, you need to add these 3 keys under the client section on the sales server. That is because web tools needs to know what your outside URL looks like, because it has no knowledge of that. You can only see the internal address, because it will try to use the host it's running on. So you need to the URL scheme override, use HTTP and change it to HTTPS when you get there. The port you're running on and URL host override should have the outside URL. Then it will start to work. And again, running HTTPS, make sure you have a valid certificate or web tools won't work at all. If you are going to call NetServer and use the web services from the outside, you need to add this section into the web config for the proxy server to make it work, else it will fail. Now it's time to set up HTTPS on all servers, and then we need to secure the HTTPS configuration. And here's the script that you can download from the NSM website. In our documentation, we have links directly to those scripts, and you download them, and you import them in PowerShell with the command that's shown there. And that will do changes in the Windows registry. But the nice thing about this script is that it also takes backup of the registry, Windows registry. So if something fails, you can always import the backup back.
And it's thoroughly tested, so...
Yeah,
it
this is
works.
a proven script.
Yeah.
On community, we have our own section on security, and on this URL, or you can just search for it, you will find all these steps that I have explained here. The document that's there is under constant changes, because we try to make it better and better. So we rely on your feedback. If you encounter things that doesn't work or things that could be better, please report it to us. You can contact either me or Hans Oluf, which... Really? Ah. Can you say something about that service product? Is it good? Yeah, great. Okay. So you can use the feedback button. Or if you have questions, you can also contact Hans Oluf, at least for now, when we're still building this document. Storage system should be protected. Should be. Yeah. It's always difficult to say it is fully protected. It is better protected. That is true. But I hope you see that some of the point here is to see that it's not very difficult to do this. It's actually just to follow a few steps, and I recommend that you try this in a test environment and do the setup, so you have to try it before you do it in a customer site, so you now know how it's done. It doesn't take much time when you have actually done it a couple of times. Any questions regarding this before we leave the last minutes for Hans Oluf?
I think we actually used up the time.
No, we have 5 minutes more.
Performance?
Do
Do you need anything extra on the servers?
No. It's to decrypt HTTPS takes some time, but it's very little compared to, for example, database access and our business logic. I don't think you will notice anything. And the model security inspection is very fast.
Very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least I haven't for SMB and even larger customers, I wouldn't expect any problems for this.
But please come and contact us afterwards or during the process if you have any questions regarding this.
I got a request when it comes to security. Could you please remove the SQL password from the customer service config file? Because when the customer actually gets hold of, okay, so here's the net server and here's the SQL password. Well, the SuperOffice security thinking is kind of out of windows when it comes to, well, if they trust it or not. Yeah, sure, this is all good, but we still store SQL administrative passwords in clear text, and that's not really so good.
Yeah.
So good.
If you pass through Proxy, the web config is almost clear.
Yeah. So that's, please.
Yeah, you're talking about the web config for...
Not the web config file. The config file in the customer service root.
Yeah, customer service.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know. Working on it. Okay, Hans Oluf, you'll get the 5 minutes.
I have one question
Yep.
regarding requirements for Proxy. How many resources we should add to Proxy server? It's probably a bit less than application server, but I don't know how to estimate how many CPU, how many memory add to Windows Proxy.
Yeah. I can't really answer that, but I think it's pretty lightweight what the proxy server needs to do.
Yeah, but we can check that, and for you running in a virtualized environment, yeah, we can check that and see if we can find a benchmark for you.
Yeah.
All right. So we have been discussing a lot of technical options right now. We've been through what we call baseline protection. But I want to take it a little bit higher. So what is information security, really? I think maybe many of you have seen what is referred to as the CIA triad before. It is the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability. And these terms are the essence in information security. So the confidentiality is that only authorized users should be able to access information. The integrity is that only authorized users should be able to modify the information. And availability is that the information must be available when the authorized users need it. But there are no absolute security. We can't prove that a system is 100% secure. And there's always trade-offs in security. For instance, passwords is one trade-off in security. Users doesn't like to enter passwords. We can have set very high demands on the complexity of the passwords. You need to use mixed case, you need to use numbers and symbols. And the more sites you use, the less probability is that you're going to remember that passwords. So if you take a look at security, we're quite good at setting functional requirements for a system. When we are creating a sale, I want these and these fields to be filled out. But we are very bad at setting security requirements. We just often say, I want it to be secure. And there's also a trade-off between security and privacy. And even though the new privacy laws have very high requirements for security, there is a trade-off between privacy and security. For instance, when you're running a firewall, you need to inspect all the traffic. But when it's encrypted, you cannot inspect it. So we have something called the security feeling or the security stance that are based on our knowledge of information security and our attitude towards information security and our behavior. Password is a very good example for this. So we know that we need to use complex passwords. We know this, but we don't really care. We start using the same passwords that we used before, but we change it a little bit. And that is becoming quite typical right now. And what we also have is that we stop caring, or we don't want to spend any money or with security. We think that we are protected by being in a flock. But as Stian have just said, there are automated tools out there that tries to get in different systems every day. For instance, I configured up a Linux server using a third-party cloud service. Within one day, I had 5,000 attempts on that server. And then we have, at the other end of the scale, we have the tinfoil hats. We got the paranoid people that don't use a phone, they live off-grid, and they have, I have a professor in information security, and he says there is 3 golden rules for network security. The first one is, don't buy a computer. Second one is, if you have to buy a computer, don't turn it on. The third one is, if you need to turn it on, don't connect it to the network. So we need to take another approach. We can't be naive, we can't be paranoid. We need to be somewhere in between. And if we look at the ISO 27000 certifications, if you look at the privacy laws, they have a risk-based approach for us. So we need to be somewhere, not necessarily in the middle, but somewhere between those extremities. I'm not sure if you have seen this, but with the technical things that we have discussed here today, what is called a CEO scam will not protect against it. CEO scams is exploiting the social behavior of our users. In this case, one attacker called and impersonated a CEO for a company here in Norway and talked to one of the persons responsible for the financials and said, hey, I need money now. And the person got a lot of money. A lot of money. $500 million is quite much. And this is an increasing trend that we can see now. NSM, FBI, all of them have gone out and warned against these CEO scams. And all of this is because that the users, well, there's a very trend out there now to blame the users. But I need to be honest that we as developers, we as consultants, we need to create solutions with the mindset of the user. Creating systems where the users doesn't understand the security is a security vulnerability itself. Any questions?
What about going in with the bank IDs and stuff like that? That's used in so many sites these days. You don't think that's considered? You have all the seems very well secure and like the
Should I now wear the paranoid hat or?
I don't know. I was into that idea.
Well, let me wear the paranoid hat. Bank ID is privately owned company. And when you use those services, they have your keys. So they can actually sign documents on your behalf. And this is when we go talk about federated services, there are always going to be certain weaknesses of them, but also strengths. And you have to analyze if the risk is worth taking.
We're a bit on overtime, so I think we'll thank you for your attention. Please come and see us in the breaks if you have questions, or in the evening, so we can discuss it over a beer or two.